Hey y'all, Dan here. Thanks for joining me.
Somewhere between the bottom of the climb and the summit is the answer to the mystery of why we climb. Greg Child. You know, someone added up all the elevations along the Appalachian Trail and they discovered that hiking the nearly 2,200 miles from Georgia to Maine is equivalent to climbing Mount Everest 16 times. And after hiking through northern Georgia, I thought that I'd already accomplished that goal, as well as hiking a few more mountains. The climbs and the descents are constant on the trail. Flat, smooth paths are rare treats, and I quickly realized the impact to my walking speed. I could walk 3 miles in 1 hour on local trails, but on the Appalachian Trail, and I'll just call it the trail, it demanded about 1 mile for an hour of walking. So after a full day of climbing to the peaks of mountains and descending into the gaps, I'd covered about 8 miles. And perhaps that's why the shelters in Georgia were constructed at 8-mile intervals. And this reality taught me a different lesson about listening to those who've gone before us, but I'll use that in a later chapter. The trail introduces itself quickly, desiring to squeeze every experience from the opportunity I wanted to hike the approach trail to the top of Springer Mountain. Springer's the official beginning for hikers who trek up to Maine. The approach trail is about 8.5 miles that leads from the base of Amicalola Falls to the top of Springer Mountain. And Amicalola is a Cherokee word that means tumbling waters. At 729 feet, that beautiful waterfall is the third highest cascading waterfall east of the Mississippi River. And to get to the top, there are 2 sets of stairs. The first set includes 175 steps. And the sign at the beginning says difficult, strenuous. And that describes more than just the first obstacle. As I climbed that staircase, the beautiful sights and sounds of the waterfalls are ever before me. At their invitation, the first climb isn't really difficult as I'd anticipated. However, after walking across a short bridge, there's a second staircase. Here again, the sign warns, West Ridge Staircase, difficulty, strenuous, 425 steps. Now things start to get interesting. After the 600 steps, then I get to start the approach trail to Springer Mountain. The first day was filled with ascending up the path, and it culminates with really an underwhelming summit. There are a few rocks at the top of Springer Mountain and a small view of the surrounding mountains and the valleys. And there's a hole about the size of a car's glove box that's hewn into the side of one of the rocks. And a logbook is kept behind the metal door in that space. And hikers sign the logbook to document their point of entry on this adventure. Climbing up the mountains become a daily exercise, and those climbs tested my legs and back as I carried my 30-pound backpack. In that pack was everything that I needed to survive on the trail. Its contents included my tent, my sleeping bag, my clothes, a repair kit to fix any potential gear failures, a first aid kit to fix any potential body failures, as well as my food for the days ahead. The climbs tested my legs, but my lungs were my greatest limiting factor physically. I thought I had prepared. I quickly learned that I was wrong. I'd find myself sucking air, trying to garner the strength to just keep going. But when I wasn't sure I could go any farther, a young man, his trail name was Big Spoon, he came and sat by me. He was tired too, and it made me feel a little better. And then he casually said, "This isn't a race." And those few words gave me the inspiration that I needed to tackle the hills ahead. His voice echoed in my memory every time I'd start to climb. This isn't a race. I would slow my pace, steadily ascend the rise, and soon I was standing at the top and thinking that this one was easier than the last. My body gained strength from the climbs. You know, sometimes the climbs, the descents are mundane. There's just no views beyond the treacherous roots and the rocks that seem to jump out of the ground to try to trip me up. Hikers refer to those areas as PUDs, pointless ups and downs. I tried to remember a comment by Wild on the trail, and I watched his videos last year. Wild would often say, "You're always one step away from going home." What he meant was that he was warning hikers to be careful, to watch where they walked to prevent tripping and injuring themselves. I tried to keep that in mind, especially going downhill in the rain. There seemed to be a lot of PUDs some days. Other climbs and descents were nearly magical. I like to wake up early to take down my tent, fill my backpack, turn on my headlamp, and get on the trail before sunrise. I enjoyed the darkness of the trail. It's illuminated only by the light beam that's coming from my forehead, where the little light is held by a band around my head. The quietness of the trail is soothing. The inability to see the path ascending up the mountainside helps to take away the sinking feeling that I always have when I focus on the obstacle ahead. And then slowly at first, the birds began to sing their wake-up songs. There's rustling sounds of critters that are scampering around in the dark. Can they see better than me? The sun begins to hint that it's coming up. The skies began to glow with beautiful colors. It won't be seen again until tomorrow morning at the same time. There's hints of purples and blues that turn to pinks and yellows and reds. Then the fiery sun breaks upward. It grows to chase away the remaining darkness. As its rays filter through the trees, it is reflected on the tree trunks. The bark of the trees look like they're smoldering embers of coals. I have to look closely to be sure that they're not burning for real. Those scenes tell me that the ups and the downs are not pointless after all. They all have meaning, waiting to share with me if I'll just slow down long enough to be taught by the trail. Sometimes I think I'm forever climbing, and eventually I'm going to step through the atmosphere, through the cosmos, and into heaven itself. I know that isn't right, but I'm not always climbing. For every up, there's a down. In the beginning, I treasured the downs. I remembered my brother Rick telling me we have to speed up on the downs and in the flat areas to make up for the time lost on the ups. Well, Rick, that's a nice thought, but there's two major flaws. First, there are no flat spots, and second, the downs are as hard as the ups. There's probably a few flat spots on the trail, I just haven't found them yet. But still, the downs are treacherous. The ups challenge my lungs, and the downs destroy my old knees. And I recall coming down off of Blood Mountain in Georgia. It was terrible. You know, Blood Mountain is one of those iconic and infamously notorious challenges in the early part of the northbound trek of the trail. It's the tallest mountain in Georgia. Blood Mountain stands at 4,442 feet. One climbs about 650 feet in a mile. This is the first big climb, but there will be many others that are still bigger. But the reputation of Blood Mountain is as intimidating as its name for hikers who are just getting started on the trail. Now, personally, I didn't find Blood Mountain as hard as I had anticipated. It gave me several great gifts that I'm very thankful for even now. First, it was a huge confidence builder. A major milestone completed, and I survived it. I learned to take breaks on the climb. There's some natural points up the mountain where the path isn't as steep as others, and those points became my rest spots. I'd climb a mile, stop, take off my backpack, rest for a good break, remembering my brother saying, "Is this a 1 or 2 Snickers climb?" So I'd eat some candy for some quick energy and start up the mountain again. And soon I was at the top, and it was an amazing view. The view from the peak of Blood Mountain was a great reward for the effort to get there. That was a huge gift. A second gift was meeting and getting to know Mike. Mike was a fellow veteran who he had retired from the U.S. Navy. I'm retired Army. We both began to talk and develop a friendship there on the top of Blood Mountain. Mike had had knee replacement surgery, and the downs were challenging for him. So for the next several days we hiked together. He was faster on the ups than I am, but I would catch him and pass him on the downs, so we averaged about the same speed overall. Mike was easy to talk to. We got along better than anyone else that I'd met on the trail. We decided to stay on top of the mountain that night, and a Boy Scout troop arrived. They camped there as well. It was a great evening. The next morning I woke up to an amazing sunrise. The clouds had settled in the valley, and it looked like soft cotton waves in an ocean. The surrounding mountains looked like mountain peaks peeking through that cloudy ocean. The sun was bright. Its rays reflected the shadows from the peaks across the top of the clouds, and I was standing there mesmerized by the view. Several of the scouts were standing around me. I told them that this was a Psalm 121 moment. They looked puzzled, and I told them to look it up, but to read it aloud. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth, and he will not let your foot be moved. I would need some of that strength to descend the backside of Blood Mountain. The descent off the mountain was much harder than the ascent had been. And there was slick rock faces where I sat down and slid down to the boulders below. And on the boulders, I had to pick and choose where to step, where to hold my hands, where to place my trekking pole so that I didn't fall perilously to my death. That's an exaggeration, of course. I never felt that I would die, but I just wondered how the rescue teams would carry my broken body down. And the point is that the downs can be just as challenging as the ups. And that lesson has remained true for every trail and on every hike that I've ever experienced.
I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way. If you ever get lost, or if the trail leads you astray, the music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word, and you beat the drum. Round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river